It's the Happy Families Podcast. It's the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now.
I know this podcast isn't about me, but this is the most fun that I have on the Happy Families podcast. It's today. This week in parenting. Hang on, let me do that properly. This week in parenting. I love what JR does with that. I love how I suddenly sound so much bigger. It's so much fun. Kylie, I'm so sorry. You're not even saying anything. You're not even laughing at me.
That's because you had my mic off.
more stories than normal today. Some very serious, some less serious. We always go over time on this one. I'm on a mission, though, to hit absolutely everything, which means too much content, not enough time. What we should do, it's called This Week in Parenting, and we do it once a month. Maybe we should just do it once a week. Anyway, let's go.
Story number 1. This has to be one of the most polarising stories that's come out of the Olympics. It's just 2 words. Raygun. Aussie Olympic breakdancer and international meme.
Up against the world's best, the 36-year-old opted for a more creative tack.
Raygun didn't score a single point.
You have to ask, was her performance that bad? Well, unfortunately, it was.
I think she brought shame to both breakdancing, herself, and Australia, frankly.
People were saying, is she touching her toes? Is she trying to kick her duvet off at night? What's she doing?
We decided that this was definitely something that parents and kids across the country, across the world,
That's right,
are talking about right now. And so we need to too.
Yeah, we put it on Facebook. Comments went absolutely nuts. Now, we didn't just say, what do you think about Raygun? I don't think that that's a constructive discussion, because technically that's not parenting news. This Week in Parenting is about parenting news. And so here's what we wrote on Facebook. From golden glory to some not so golden moments, it's been a wild ride for Australia at these Olympics. Raygun, the breakdancing trailblazer, is sparking debate across the nation. Some are cheering her on, others not so much. But guess what? These headline-grabbing moments are pure gold for sparking meaningful conversations with our kids. Let's use Raygun's story to dig into values, dreams, and what it really means to be a winner.
Here are some of the questions that we placed on our socials. Do you think Raygun's performance was a hit or a miss? Why are people reacting so differently? And is it fair? Is it kind? No points on the board, but was Raygun still a winner in some other way? And have you ever tried your hardest and still didn't come out on top? How does that feel?
So the whole idea of these questions is not to get caught up in the weeds of what was going on with Raygun and this performance. It's kind of, in some ways, ancillary or to the side of what's really going on here. Kids are watching this. There's a whole lot of judgment going on. And I think that's emblematic of our broader society's approach to things. Plus, we see what happens on social media when this stuff goes ballistic, which it has. These conversations, these questions help children to have some empathy, but also think a little bit more deeply about the topic. That's why we wanted to talk about that on This Week in Parenting. We will link to our Facebook post so that you can have the same conversations at your home if you would like to in the show notes.
Story number 2, Nate Byrne. He's not a name that you've probably heard of.
Unless you're watching ABC Breakfast TV. In that case, you would know exactly who he was because you'd see him doing the weather every morning.
But he recently had a panic attack on air. And this is the footage from it.
We're going to see lots more rain in the days ahead. I'm actually going to need to stop for a second. Some of you may know that I occasionally get affected by some panic attacks, and actually that's happening right now. Lisa, maybe I could hand back to you.
You certainly can, Nate. And Nate wrote a great piece on the ABC online website about this, and I reckon we might re-up it, put it on our socials so you can have a bit of a read.
So technically not parenting either, but again, worth bringing up, worth having the conversations, normalising the reality that anxiety and panic attacks are an all part of life for some people and that they can happen. And what I think really stands out to me, Kylie, is that you can have a panic attack on the inside but still look like you're okay on the outside. I mean, you could hear Nate's voice trembling. You could hear him struggling with it, but he held it together. communicated what he needed to communicate, and then he got out of there. I just think that he handled it brilliantly and the team handled it brilliantly, and it gives us the opportunity to have some really important conversations.
But I think that can only happen when there's open communication and a general understanding across the board. Like if he didn't have that support structure in place, I think it would have been a lot harder for him to go through that process.
Something that's ironic, I've just talked about how social media was so brutal, honestly, brutal to Raygun. Everything that I've seen, and we posted this as well on our Facebook page, everything that I've seen around the response to Nate and his panic attack has been nothing but supportive, which also gives us the opportunity to say to our kids, how do we get more of that in our lives, especially when we're online, versus the alternative? Because the inflammatory nature of what happened with Raygun is so different. It's so different, but that's what the algorithm feeds on. And yet the Nate Byrne thing, I just think it was beautifully dealt with.
Story number 3.
Yarra Ranges Council has come under fire after it banned a school crossing supervisor from high-fiving students.
This is from news.com.au, quote, students of Mount Dandenong Primary School in Greater Melbourne will no longer receive high fives from their beloved crossing supervisor, John Golden, during drop-off and pick-up after he was reprimanded by Yarra Ranges Council. Mr. Golden, who was recently crowned one of Victoria's top crossing supervisors, has been warned by the council against, quote, initiating unnecessary physical contact, close quote, with the children.
It's a bit sad because it really brightens our day. I guess there's always got to be someone to complain.
I don't know. The world's gotten soft.
Okay, so my mouth's dropping. Unless there's more to this story, this breaks my heart.
Yeah.
This actually breaks my heart. Not only have we acknowledged in those few lines you've just read that he's one of the top crossing supervisors, he obviously has a good reputation. And the kids know him. He's there every day.
Just need to clarify something for our overseas listeners as well. A lollipop man or a lollipop lady, they're the people who stand at the pedestrian crossing and hold up the sign that looks like a lollipop that says stop or go or whatever, so the kids can cross the road safely. So here's this guy. He's giving the kids a high five. The council stepped in and said, no. Let me continue here. Here's another quote from the website. Outraged parents have rallied behind the cherished lollipop man, with one beginning a petition to have the ban removed. Basically, someone somewhere has believed the media hype that the world is so dangerous that everyone, including the beloved lollipop man, is out to get them or their kids. I mean, it's, as you said, it's just nuts. Society falls apart without trust. The overwhelming majority of people are good and safe and wanting to help. Mr. Golden is going to have done a whole number of checks before he's allowed to do the job. He's giving kids high fives, for goodness sakes.
He's volunteering his time.
Now, if he's, yeah, that's right. He's doing, I don't know if they get paid or not, but if they do, it'll be a pittance. If he's stopping cars to give kids high fives while the car's still on the road, or if they're driving past and they're hanging out the window and high-fiving, well, that's fair enough. That's concerning. That's dangerous.
Well,
but
alternatively, if
that's not what I'm getting here.
If there are children specifically who don't like physical contact or have felt uncomfortable because they feel like they don't have a choice in it, then again, having a conversation with them and just explaining, hey, Freddie doesn't really enjoy a high five. Can you just let him walk past you or whatever? Like this total ban.
Sign the petition. High fives are good. They boost morale. Kids, get happy.
When you think about kids' need to be seen, heard and valued, this is such a beautiful way to start their day.
Yeah, it's such an easy one. I can't believe I can't believe it's happened.
Say the high fives!
All right, 2 heavy ones after the break. A study's been reported as saying that autism can be reversed and new mental health data on Aussie kids.
Story number 4. You've got a story reported in the Telegraph in the UK, Justin, about autism being reversible. This sounds both incredible and probably a bit provocative.
Yeah, I want to read this to you. And the reason this is not in the doctor's desk is because it doesn't qualify. Here's the headline in the Telegraph. Autism can be reversed, scientists claim. The summary underneath the headline says, study with 2 non-identical twin girls found some symptoms can be reduced to an indistinguishable level. And
so I'm guessing you're going to tell me that the fact that it's a study of two people.
Yeah, well, that is part of the problem, yeah. So the story goes on to talk about two young girls who had severe autism. They were 20 months old when they were diagnosed, and they went through a series of quite complex and challenging protocols over a number of years and ticked off a bunch of developmental milestones, and voila, they're cured. So in this, and I'm using air quotes or scare quotes here, study, in this quote-unquote study, there's a long list of interventions by clinicians and the girls' parents, including dietary changes and speech therapy and applied behavioural analysis, otherwise known as ABA, which I'm really strongly against 99.9% of it because it's usually done in unkind and cruel ways, and reported that the girls' scores improved in some behavioural categories on what's known as the ATEC, the Autism Treatment Evaluation Checklist. That's a questionnaire that basically assesses the effectiveness of whether autism treatment is working. So it's a fascinating story because some profound, like really, really profound results are reported, but, and it's a great big but, always a big but.
I like big butts.
I think we've got a case of really poor reporting, and I need to clear a couple of things up. So first off, as you said, Kylie, it's called a study, but it's not a study. Well, if it is, it's a case study. We don't have any clinical trial here. It's just
a case study of one family.
Yeah, two girls trying some protocols. Second, methodologically weak, selectively describes only two children, lacks sufficiently rigorous data collection and adequate follow-up of the children. And third, autism doesn't, quote unquote, go away. Everything we know about it suggests otherwise. Just irresponsible reporting in one of the biggest papers in the UK or in Europe, really. And it's a really big challenge that this has been reported.
I would assume that parents who are dealing with children with similar challenges would take great hope in reading this article and seeing that there may be possibilities for improvement with their children.
Yeah, Kylie, maybe. And that's both good and bad. I mean, we need hope. We need hope means that you've got a goal, you've got pathways, and you've got the belief that you can get there. If every family could do what this protocol was, then maybe we would see children doing better. But the thing is, we don't really know. Like I said, it's not even a study, it's a case study. It's true that some of the things that they did can help to contain certain challenges that are associated with autism, but some of the things that they did don't. And that's why we need two things. Number one, we need really good quality research. And number two, we need good quality reporting. I mean, in a perfect world, the data would be right. And I really, truly, truly hope that the kids are thriving. And I'm hopeful that it's been good for the family. But it's not science. And if anyone saw it, I would be encouraging them to take it lightly and get appropriate help. It's not a good story. It's in This Week in Parenting to highlight that sometimes stuff that you read in the papers, imagine that, might not be as trustworthy as you think, or the stuff that you read online or see on TikTok.
Okay, final story for This Week in Parenting.
No, that's not how you do it. It's This Week in Parenting.
This Week in Parenting.
I don't know, JR. See what you can do with that.
Aussie kids' mental health is not good.
Professor Patrick McGorry is a brilliant Australian. Today he released a report that was about the mental health failures of this country and particularly, yet again, how we are failing a generation of kids.
Okay, this is a landmark study over 5 years, led by Professor Patrick McGorry, one of Australia's most well-known and highly respected psychiatrists, published in The Lancet. Natasha Robinson reported this in The Australian last week, and I quote, "Australian psychiatrists have led the biggest ever worldwide study into youth mental health, finding that young people's psychological health has, quote, entered a dangerous phase," close quote. Goes on to say the incidence of mental ill health in young people in Australia has risen by 50% in the past 15 years and has further risen alarmingly steeply since the COVID-19 pandemic, especially among teenage girls, such that almost 50%, let me say that again, almost 50% of women aged between 16 and 24 report experiencing a mental health disorder. Professor McGorry said, "The conclusion is that society is in trouble in terms of its ability to safeguard the mental health of young people as they make the transition from childhood to adulthood."
Justin, how do we compare with other countries?
Well, based on this particular set of research, Australia is second only to the United States in terms of rising mental ill health trends. And I hate to say it, but suicide is the leading cause of death among people aged 15 to 44 in this country.
It's just such staggering numbers that we're talking about. 50%, that's 1 in 2.
Yeah.
That means that my children are...
Well, 3 and 6, because we've got 6 daughters, are likely to show up with a diagnosis.
And not only that, associate with friends who are also struggling deeply, not to mention the fact that at some point they are going to experience deep sadness, as we already have as a family, with friends and family leaving, in such tragic circumstances.
Yeah. Based on what Professor McGorry has said, compared to the $40 billion a year, let me say that again, $40 billion that we spend on about 600,000 Australians with a physical disability, Australia spends about $11 billion on over 5 million people with a mental illness. So we're talking about 5 times the number of people struggling with mental illness as physical disability. And we're talking about 40 billion for physical disability versus 11 billion for mental illness. We're spending about 7% of our health budget on mental health, but the suite of conditions is responsible for 15 to 20% of the health burden of society. We're getting it wrong. We're getting it wrong as a society in terms of why mental health challenges are so great, but also our funding allocation and the way we're trying to deal with this is similarly not right. I'm not suggesting we should take anything away from people with physical disabilities, by the way. I'm just saying we're fundamentally, not just fundamentally, we're completely under-resourced when it comes to mental health challenges.
So what would you say are the major contributing factors to the rise that we've experienced, especially since COVID?
Yeah, so a couple of things. First of all, disintegration of families and relationships, lack of margin, feeling overwhelmed, burnt out, too much going on, lack of nature, too much time indoors, too much screen time, legislation around screens and algorithms. Actually, it's not really about the screen time. It's about the algorithms and what this stuff is doing to our mental health. Zuckerberg and his ilk are responsible for more harm to the mental health of our young people than pretty much anyone who's ever walked the planet. What we really need is a move towards more natural living, less financial pressure, stable families, margin in our lives, just a whole lot more nature. This growth is good paradigm that we've been living under for decades now, it's simply not true. It's far more complex than that. But these are the challenges we're dealing with.
Well, it's a bit of a heavy way to finish.
Sorry.
Our This Week in Parenting episode.
I said it was my favourite. I feel like I've had a good rant. I feel like I've talked about important things, but it is pretty heavy, isn't it?
Let's wrap it up here.
Okay, so we need to promote mental health building activities in our families. We need to recognise that individual responsibility is the way to go because the government can't seem to create a system that's supportive. Thank you for listening to This Week in Parenting. We so much appreciate you being with us.
I'm really glad you took that breath.
On the Happy Families podcast, which is produced by Justin Rulon from Bridge Media. We will link to all of these stories in the show notes. And if you'd like to know more about how your family can be happier, especially with stories like the one I've just shared, sign up to our free, super helpful newsletter at happyfamilies.com.au.